Welcome to the Stories to Tell podcast, and in this episode, our special guest is David Ruiz. David is a dear friend, a proud father, and a successful chef in the Albuquerque area. David has some great stories to tell in this episode that demonstrate his amazing heart and how passionate he is about his profession. And be sure to stay to the end, because all I will say is this last story involves what can happen when you transport 15 gallons of soup. And we kick things off with David's first story about his amazing experience on a television cooking show.
Anyway, so I get picked, and it's called it's Compliplated, and it's a new cooking show that they're doing with Tabitha Brown.
Right.
She's vegan. She's vegan and she's gluten free. But the premise behind the show is Manit Chichan, who's one of the she's a restaurateur, and she's always on, like, when she's on Chopped, one is the judges, and she's on Iron Chef and all that stuff. So her and Tabitha pair up, and what they do is they challenge you to cook these Chopped style, like, vegan dishes that are themed. So, and then they bring out a friend who's got another sort of like allergy or something. So
it's complicated or
Compliplated.
Compliplated.
Exactly. Okay. So I get chosen, and ironically, this one's in LA, right? So they fly me out to LA. We were the very first episode filmed of this Compliplated. Yeah. So it aired as episode 6 when the show came out, but we were actually the first to film, if that makes sense.
Were they still trying to could you tell if they were still trying to figure things out themselves with the production
a little bit,
of it?
But they're pretty, there's a lot of people there. So they get us into the kitchen. And again, so this is all, this one was themed game day.
All right.
Okay. So the very first, so they bring you out. It's me, and I was the youngest one there. It was this older gentleman from Boston. I had a girl from a private chef from LA and a guy who worked in LA who had just wrote a cookbook. So, they're all looking at me as like, New Mexico, this kid, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, what does he know about food? You know what I mean?
Man, no cred. They're not giving it to you.
No, I got zero credit. It was funny. It was super funny. So I just kept my mouth shut. I was just smiley and just, hey, how's it going? And just, but because I had run, because I had breakfast, because I had done everything, Mark, I was confident. Like, I went into that thing going like, you know what?
Today's my day.
I was like, if I can make it past the first round, it's mine.
There you go.
That's what I thought. I'm not shitting you. It's just, that's what I thought. So, first round, there's 4 of us. They bring out the girl. There's a girl. So we have to make, what is it? We have to make a quote unquote game day bite, but it has to be vegan, has to be, gluten free, and it was no bread and nothing fried. Okay,
good grief! Here's some lettuce.
Yeah, so in my mind, it sucked because I remember being like, I was like, nachos was like the very first thing I wanted to do, right? And then I thought it was nachos or something with like fries, like loaded fries, and I was like, oh man, she took everything. They just took everything away. So what I ended up creating was I did an elote.
What's that?
So Mexican street corn. So what I did is
there you go.
So I took corn, I peeled it, like I boiled it in a bunch of amino acids in like flavored water just to get it cooked and get some flavor into it. And I made this gorgeous crema. So I actually had to use like cashew yogurt, and I did a little bit of a little bit of lemon juice, lime juice, salt, and then I built this beautiful salad on the side of it that had jalapenos and cilantro and a little bit of watermelon radish. And so that was my dish. So I was in the bottom 2, right? So I was in the bottom 2 when it came to judging, but I beat the guy next to me, right? I beat this kid, the kid from LA who had just wrote a cookbook, and I knew it, Mark. As soon as I made it past that round, I was like, it's on. It's on. Yeah. Okay, so second round comes. They bring out a different, so it's Manit, it's Tabitha. They bring out another gentleman now we have to make a game day hot dog, right? So you can't use any meat, right? So again, it has to be vegan. It's got to be gluten-free. And the guy says, oh, I can't eat beans, which again sucked because I was like, it's going to make a chili cheese dog. So I immediately like, okay, boom, boom, boom in my head. I'm like, all right, carrot dog, right? Carrot dog's well known.
Yeah,
right?
I've had carrot dog, yeah.
Take the carrot. I got carrots, I peel them, boil them. And then I'm like, all right, what can I do? What can I do? They brought us out some gluten-free buns. So I take the bun, I toast the bun off. I make a spicy mustard to go with it. And then I do peppers and onions. And then I took some of the onions and I marinate it in a little bit of the soy milk that they had. And then I deep fried them. So I had this big, beautiful, like hot dog that you get at a stadium. Man, how creative is that?
That is super creative.
Loved it. Crushed it immediately. First thing they say is, man, this is a hot dog. This is a game day hot dog. And then what I did was,
did you look at the other contestants? How's my New Mexico boy doing now?
Well, exactly. So the carrot, what I did, this was the key. I think that they loved about it was that I took that carrot and after I boiled it, I put it on an actual grill. So it had the grill marks. It looked like the carrot. It had some of that grill flavor. So Mark, we get it in there. Okay, now I'm into the final round, and I'm with this guy, and I have no problem saying this. He was an asshole. He's this guy from Boston. He's from Boston, and he's got the accent, and he's looking at me, and he's like, I own 2 restaurants in Boston. And he's like, I never even heard of New Mexico, and this, that, the other. And I'm just looking at this guy like,
I'm about to show you, buddy.
I was just like, yeah, man, like, whatever, dude. Like, okay. I was like, so anyway, so now it's like us in this final 2 round. Now they bring back both of the contestants plus Tabitha and the thing. So now we had to make chili. Check this out. We had to make chili with no bread, nothing fried, vegan, gluten-free, and no beans.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Right? And so I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, all right. So I do what any rational chef I think would do. It's like, so there's all this plant-based meat in there, Mark, and I took it. As soon as the timer goes off, I ran into that fridge and I fucking grabbed that meat out.
It was there. It was there, yeah.
It was there, right? I grabbed a can of tomatoes. They had koji bacon. So I took the bacon, got it going with a bunch of onions and garlic. I throw my plant-based meat in. I throw a bunch of seasonings in. And I just put a lid on this thing and crank it up to boil to try to get as much flavor. Because, you're trying to make chili. You're trying to make chili in 30 minutes, right? So the other guy, he goes, he's talking all kinds of crap. He's basically like, oh, well, yeah, like doing the plant-based meat, that's too easy. I'm going to do something. I'm going to win because he made his out of, he did like a chili out of, like root vegetables. And I was like, yeah, it's like, look, if I lose today because of that, at least I made the final round. But if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out making the best chili I know. And chili has to be, whether it's plant-based meat or real meat, it's got to have meat in it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I did it. And, we get up there and the judges, and they loved my chili. They loved it, and they picked me to win. And it was an awesome experience. And
congrats, man.
I won. I won the $10,000, which was like super incredible.
Oh yeah.
And my son, Memphis was so proud and to see his dad on TV. And every once in a while, like I'll wake up in the morning, he'll want to watch it again. So you can watch it on Discovery, so cool. The Discovery Plus app or whatever, or Food Network. You can go on there. And
that must make you feel good.
It does, Mark. It was just a very validating just experience that I could hang with like other people, and especially these people. The guy I went against, Darren, was very formidable. He was a great cook. He just talked a lot of crap, and it was nice to kind of just give it back to him a little bit.
There you go, man. So. Yeah. Oh, those are great stories. I've always wondered what those were like, and
they're intense, Mark. It's almost awful in a way. Like it's
6 to midnight.
Yeah,
3 bags of chips, cameras in your face, lights in your face,
and you're sweating. You're tired. You have to pee. Sometimes they won't let you use the bathroom because they're about to start filming this. And then at the end, Mark, here's the worst thing. So you end up winning. You end up you're like and then all these people are congratulating you, trying to get near you, and then you're like, oh, I just need I remember telling everybody, it's like, I need space. Can I go out? They let me go out for a walk. So I went out for a walk for a minute outside the studio, and I came back in. And then for about 3 hours, they make you sit. They do these testimonials. They make you sit in a very uncomfortable chair with more cameras around you, and they're asking you. You need to tell us about your thought process behind this, why you did this, why you did this. So they have everything that you did. Right? From literally start to beginning, they ask every detailed question about this and that. And then on top of it, at the end, they make you say like the letter, like and 6 different times. And then just 6 different times. Just. It's so insane, Mark.
What was that for?
I have no idea. So when they're editing it, I guess. And so you're sitting there and you're just like, I'm looking at these people, and the girl could tell, the girl who's doing this, and she's just like, she's looking at me and I'm looking at her, and she's like, you don't, it's like, I can tell you don't want to be here, but if you do it today, you won't have to come back tomorrow and do it.
Oh man,
Mark.
Your brain must have just been like it was spark overload.
Yeah. It was so much stimulation. I was so tired. But at the same time, you're so tired, Mark.
Oh man.
I was like, somebody get me a cot and let me take an hour nap. Like, so wild.
Oh my God. You ever have someone take a chance on you when you wanted to quit? To have someone truly believe in you? In this incredible story, David talks about this happening in his life and how he now gets to pay it forward. Plus, you will get insight into how truly passionate he is about being a chef and what has helped make him into such an artist with his food plating. Another thing I was wanting to chat with you about, that for people that don't know, what is your Instagram? It's at Chef Ruiz?
Yes,
at
exactly.
Chef Ruiz, yeah. And for anybody who hasn't checked it out, you have got to check it out, because David is an absolute artist, man. Your medium, instead of like paints or pencils or whatever, is food.
Oh, yeah.
And you're plating. It isn't plating. Well, I guess you could put it in front of a customer if you wanted to, but it is more even elevated than that. It's truly works of art. I think you should have like a gallery like for all your stuff. Where did that come from? That creativity, that passion for wanting to do that?
Mark, I worked for the same restaurant I was saying that reminded me a lot of Scalo back home. And it no longer exists, but in San Jose, California, where I got, my first start as a chef, young culinarian. I worked for a guy named Thomas Ricci. He'll be like one of those love-hate relationships where the guy pushed me really hard. I mean, harder than any chef I'd worked for had pushed me before. But in this restaurant, plating was so key. This is about 2010, 2011. I'd never worked in a restaurant up until that point where plating was such a high focus. I would, your basic, meat, veg, protein, little sauce,
right.
Almost your banquet style plate. But this man like really expanded my mind into like, things can look differently and people eat with their eyes first. And that had always struck with me. So I struggled in his restaurant. I worked with him for 2 years. The first 6 months, I remember, I had to have been, 21, 22. I just remember leaving every day just feeling more defeated than the day before because, I hadn't worked in a place that was so, high paced, but like it demanded you to like have focus on like how small you cut the shallots. And,
I know, man.
How you peel the carrot and how you, how thin the mashed potatoes were. Like everything was just had to be exactly. And so I told the chef one day, I was like, hey, listen, I just don't think that this is for me. And, he pulled me aside that day and he was just like, you know what, David, like you have a lot of talent. You're fighting against this, you're saying you can't do it. You're coming into work with the mentality that you can't plate. You can't do this. He's like, so what I'm going to challenge you to do is start coming into work like 30 minutes early every day and I'll work with you a little bit.
Wow.
So, I actually started getting into work an hour early every day. And I started working with him on butchering stuff and plating and just practicing in my time and my speed. Because the one thing about cooking is I'm not naturally talented at it, Mark. Like
what?
I'm just not. I am not. It's something that for me, I have to really work for.
Wow.
But, I think I'm one of those people who's going to like outwork most people in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time with him over the next 6 months, so I was about a year in. And like what like football players or people in sports would say is like, it started to really slow down for me. Meaning, no matter how busy the restaurant was, it was like it didn't matter how much the tickets. Like in my mind, I could slow it down, and I could start to see myself and my skills really start to improve. And I started plating dishes my own way. Right, I started taking a lot of what he had taught me, and it was kind of incredible. Like I could see myself growing, and Chef Thomas, you know, he was just really cultivating that. He was pushing me every day to just kind of get harder, you know, to push harder, to keep progressing, So that's really where the basis of like my plating skills kind of went. And then, you know, as time went on, Mark, you know, I worked at a few other places before I moved out here. You know, I kind of would start forcing myself to spend 30 minutes a day, you know, researching like what these chefs in France were doing, in Denmark, Japan.
Oh, wow.
And I started really looking at like, you could manipulate food to look a certain way, you know, and when you taste it, it might taste exactly opposite of what you see.
Yeah.
And I really started to enjoy that. You know, I really started to notice that people enjoyed my plating. This is like, you know, now we're fast forward into 2013, 2014. And I think really where I started to kind of hit my real stride was where I met you, was at a restaurant called Soul and Vine.
Yeah, that's right. You were playing. I remember when we went in there.
This was, I will never forget this time in my life. I would say 14 to almost 16. I was doing whatever I wanted in the restaurant. I mean, I was playing with doing like Starburst glass, and we were doing like, I did this Kids of the 90s series where I was doing like Gushers ice cream, and we were messing around with doing different like creme brulees, and you know, playing around with like all kinds of things. But what I noticed there was I really kind of started to gain a reputation for like the plating skills. And people were like starting to pay me to like do this like off site and in other places. And then especially in the last, you know, 5 years, Mark, I've let the world inspire me, you know, when it comes to plating. I think that all the rules of the past, you know, the 80s and 90s of food are like, to me, like they were just such restrictions. And I'm somebody who lives outside of those restrictions, especially with food. You know, if there's an orange, there's many ways to cut that orange and segment it onto a plate. You know, beautiful edible flowers that we've grown. We have so many local farmers with like different microgreens and small vegetables, and being able to kind of take that, manipulate it in a way that makes people go, wow. And I think the very biggest thing about this is, have you ever seen the movie Ratatouille?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you remember there's that scene at the end where the antagonist, Antoine Ego, you know, he's the food critic, right? Remember, he's like, serve me your finest, whatever. And the rat makes him ratatouille, right? And he sets the dish down in front of Antoine Ego, and he takes that first bite and he eats it, and he drops the fork, and immediately in his head he's transported back to this time in the French countryside where his mom, he had fallen on his bike, and his mom had made this dish. And really, Mark, like with my plating and my style of food, that is what I'm trying to capture in everything. It's like that moment of that you take a bite of something and it just transport you, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, to somewhere else in life. And it makes you feel something, and my food speaks to you. Yeah. You know, and I think that's where I'm at in my culinary career. And it's they say that a chef only gets 4 or 5 years of that. And I feel like I'm like in the beginning stages of that. And that's just where I'm at. I want people to eat my food, to see my food on Instagram, to come down to the restaurant, eat it, and feel something in their lives, whether it's, like I said, like happiness, and sometimes it could be sadness. Maybe I'll make you a dish that reminds you of your grandmother that passed away. Yeah. You know, but it's something that is going to like evoke emotion in you.
I want to take one step back because I thought it was so powerful what you said. So you were in your early 20s when you walked up to the head chef at that restaurant at that time and said, I'm out of here. This is not for me. What a fork in time, a why in time, what do they call that? A choice in time where that head chef could have said to you, get out of here. You didn't belong in here anyway.
Yeah.
Or, you know what, David? I believe in you. You've got talent. I'm going to take some of my own personal time to give to you because I believe in you. That's amazing, man. And for you also to say, okay, let me humble myself here a little bit. I'm gonna grind. I'm gonna grind with you. And look where that's got you to.
Exactly.
Isn't that? Oh, I love stories like that.
It's good. You go first, right?
I was just wondering too, if you kind of have, because of that significance and somebody doing that for you, do you also do that for others on your?
Everybody's gone through some bad stuff in their life, Mark, including myself. And, I had a dishwasher, for example, who had gone through some really rough times in his life and spent some time in prison and came to us and, struggled with me for the first 6 months. He's like, oh, I'm only a dishwasher. There's not like, that's all I am. And I would tell him, I was like, look, man, like if you think that you can do this and do this well, I'll start to train you on something else. Okay. So he spent 6 months. I tell him, I don't want to hear excuses. I just come into work on time, have a good attitude, wash the dishes, do the best of your ability. So 6 months as he does it. So after 6 months, I start to say, okay, you know what? You ever used a knife? No, I've never used a knife. Okay. Well, we have a house knife. Okay. So I start having him practice on a house knife. Okay, we're just going to cut lettuce. We're just going to cut potatoes. We're just going to cut onions. We're just going to do the very basics. Okay. 2 weeks later, kid's killing it, right? Okay. All right. We're going to move you up to the line now. Okay. We're going to start making salads. And we just worked him up. And that's all we did, Mark. And now this kid is running my line.
Oh gosh, Dave.
So there's all these like winnable stories. And I try to give as many opportunities to people as I can. It's also one of those things that, it's like you lead a horse to water, they have to drink.
It's got to be both sides.
It's got to be both sides. But I used the inspiration from that chef years ago because, like you said, Mark, there was at that time, I was getting paid like $12 an hour, and there was a dozen kids knocking on his back door every day wanting to come work for him. So he could have very easily just been like, you know what? Hey, I'm just going to pull a resume out of my drawer and I'm going to call this person. You'll be replaced in the hour.
Wow.
But for whatever reason, because it took me a long time to believe in myself, he believed in me. And I have no idea why, Mark, but it is a moment that is pivotal in my career, in my life, and something that I draw experience on quite often.
I loved hearing your story about the gentleman that you took under your wing, man. It's got to be so fulfilling when you just want to give somebody a chance. They want that chance and they're willing to put into it. Now they're running your line. Amazing.
But it's also, at the same time, Mark, it's that's what success to me is now.
Yeah.
Success has changed. The awards and the recognition doesn't mean anything to me anymore. It's how can I help my community? How can I help the people who work for me? That's like what it is. That's what success is. You know
awesome,
what I mean?
Man. Awesome. That's what fills up your heart. I am a big believer in having dreams and in never giving up on your goals. In this story, David relates something he was shooting for in his life, and look where he is now. Remember you were telling me when you first came to Albuquerque, however many years. How many years ago has it been?
So this last March 27th, Mark, was exactly a decade.
No, yeah, 10 years. Good 10 for you.
Years, so,
and then didn't you spend, like when you first got here, you kind of you knew of the restaurant, and weren't you kind of dreaming one day that, oh man, one day I might work there or be the head chef there or something?
So, prior to me like moving here, I definitely looked up the restaurant scene in New Mexico. There's a few restaurants that stood out, but Scala reminded me a lot of a restaurant I worked at when I was a young cook back home in California. Open kitchen, completely, glass windows looking out onto the historic Route 66. And I heard just many great stories about the restaurant. And it was one of those things that someday if the opportunity ever comes up, I'd love to be able to jump on that. And it just so happened that, I've been there nearly 2 years now. And, I got that opportunity. I jumped at it, and it's been a ton of hard work. but it's starting to really pay off. So
what an honor, man. What an honor to be able to say that you said it was a partnership in it or a part owner?
Yeah. So basically a partnership, part owner. And it was fantastic. It was one of those things that, I put a lot of sweat equity into the restaurant, and I'm very lucky that, the ownership group that is there, definitely values like my ideas, and kind of like what I've helped build there at the restaurant. Culture is absolutely fantastic. We've had a really good core group of staff stick around, so we're very lucky, both front and back of the house, and we just got a really great team. And I think that they recognize that and rewarded me, which I think is so important.
That's just a cool story about coming to a town, knowing of a restaurant, and then just grinding, just being passionate about your craft and learning your craft. And then the next thing you know, you reach that pinnacle of success. It took 10 years or 8 years maybe, but you kept after it. And I think that's an inspiring type of tale.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one that, I can definitely tell you, I never thought I was going to be the chef there, Mark. It was definitely something I had thought about, dreamed about, but something I'd never really thought it would come to fruition, especially when the restaurant closed down back in 2018. I thought it was one of those things where it was
dreams over.
It was sort of gone. So I had laid that to rest a while ago. And then the ownership group bought it, and I remember they had reached out to me when they were first reopening, but I had, I was deep into Paco at that time. And, it wasn't something that I was willing to leave just yet. But when the opportunity came up a few years later, I was just kind of like, why not? Like, why not go for it? Why not try to bring it back to that, like, that bravado that it had, this place that served, beautiful Italian food and these crazy Bloody Marys on the weekend, and just, was really well known. And if most people don't know, a man named Tom White was the guy, one of the founding partners, and he owns the El Vicino's Canteen Brewery here, and he's actually one of my mentors. And so, obviously having Tom just kind of in my ear about, hey, this could be a good opportunity for you as well, and kind of following in his footsteps meant everything.
And maybe, again, I am so passionate just about right timing and being patient and coming along, and perhaps the whole history of the restaurant and then your history and your timing being right. They probably just had you at the right time with the right passion about what it used to be and bringing it back to make it happen.
And that's a lot of what life is, right, Mark? It's timing. It's just, and this was the exact right timing at the right time. So it worked out.
Love it. I'm glad it came about. Embarrassing moments. We've all had them. And in this last story, David relates a most embarrassing moment for him that involves 15 gallons of soup.
My third day in Aspen, I worked on top of Aspen Mountain. You take a gondola ride up there. And I had a rolling rack, right, Mark? So they had these big rolling racks, and
with like the sheets in them.
Like that? Yeah. So there was a big one, and it was full of soup, like different soups, right? No. Like soups that like they were laid out in these like army. They call them like army pans, and these army pans.
That doesn't seem like a very good idea.
So I was rolling it up from. You had to go from downstairs on this elevator upstairs, and they had this really like high-end cafeteria. I mean, it had lobster and all kinds of stuff. But I was bringing out all this soup that the chef had just, these chefs would get there at 4 a.m. and they would make, corn chowder and chili, and I'm bringing it up, and I'm just like D, just like young David, just happy as a clam to be there, and I'm like rolling the rack, and there's this. Little divot, like just a little. Didn't
seem like much, maybe.
Just a little divot, but it's out. It's like going out onto the floor to like place all this soup. So I'm like bringing it, and I'm just all happy, and I hit this divot, and the entire thing of soup, Mark. I mean, I'm talking like 10, 15 gallons of soup.
Oh my God!
Comes tumbling down, right? And I'm sitting there, and tears start tears are coming out of my eyes.
Sure, man.
I'm 19 years old and I'm like, I'm gonna get fired. Like I just moved here. I just moved here, and I'm like, and all these cooks, all the rest of the cooks are like looking at me just like with like eyes wide open. And the chef at the time of the place was this real piece of work. His name was John King. He was this English guy, and he comes up there and he just kind of snatches me by the collar, and he's just laying into me and laying into me and laying into me. And it was, I don't know, it was embarrassing, Mark. I mean, it was, I had to, so then not only that, I had to go and clean up 15 gallons of soup. And do you know how hard it is to clean up like 5 gallons of chili spilled and mixed with like corn chowder?
Oh, man.
It was awful.
Maybe we'll make this a reoccurring guest spot if you would like to.
I would love that, Mark. Yeah, this has been awesome.
You have such great stories, and I feel like we can just talk for hours. But any last things you wanted to share or anything? Or
come out to Scalo.
Yeah.
I launched a new menu like a month and a half ago. That's fantastic. We're relaunching. So we've relaunched the Bloody Mary bar starting in the beginning of the year. The Bloody Mary bar will be every Sunday again, 11 to 2. You can load up on the crab claws and all the stuff that was there. I just think I want to personally thank you and Susan, Mark. You know, people who are listening to this, like I said, a lot of the people I know, great couples that I know, and I know a few of them now, I all met at Soul and Vine. And you and Susan used to come down. I used to joke around and tell you guys were my favorite couple, and that's still true. You guys, you two are fantastic. Susan's got a heart of gold. So do you, Mark. Over the years, you've supported me in ways that a lot of people haven't, you know, just by hiring me to come do private dinners, coming down to the restaurant. There's several, you know, chefs in the community who love you and know who you and Susan are. And like you guys are a well-known couple because you support local. And I just think that you're incredible, Mark. You guys are great people, and I hope all the best for you. And, you know, I wish wherever Susan is, you tell her I said hello and give her a big hug for me. And I'm just proud of you, man. I'm proud of you for starting this. I'm proud of you and Susan for the way you guys are with one another and how successful you've been, you know, just in your lives. And you guys are good people, and I think good things happen to good people.
Gosh, man, you're going to make me tear up. That was really, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, not a problem.
We feel the same about you as well. We just wish you all the best coming up here in 2024.
Beautiful.
And hope to see you many times.
Yeah, same with you, Mark.
To David for coming on the show this week, and thank you for listening. Be sure to follow Stories to Tell, as there will be many more episodes coming soon. All the best.